Welcome everybody to this week, and well, what a week it has been. It's fantastic to be back here once again, and with once again a brand new background. I kind of liked the last background, but at the same time, there was just something about it that just kind of felt hokey. So I was like, yeah, I need to come up with something different. And well, this is the one, I think. I think this is the one. So definitely be sure to jump in the comments. Let me know, or I guess in this case, jump into chat. Let me know if you like this one better than last week's, and we'll go from there. So we got a lot of different things that happened in the last week that we will be hitting on today. Everything from, of course, what in the banana bread is going on with Elon. We've got more Elon news. So we got Elon news. We got some surveys that went out in both Canada and the US in regards to inflation. We've got some earnings reports. We've got news on the CNR. We got a whole bunch of different things. Now, before we jump into any of that content, I'm just going to say very quickly connect with you all in the chat. And Jordan also is, hi, Candace, see you shortly. Absolutely. I think Jordan was the first here today. Apparently, the friggin' Oracle is doing yard work. Yikes. That doesn't sound fun. I'd rather be watching a live stream than doing yard work. And we got Jill who says, I like it. That's good. That's good. She's sometimes a hard person to please. She's picky, but she's picky in a good way. And that's the thing. That's why I say I kind of like the old one, but I kind of know it sucked at the same time. So anyway, hopefully this is all good and we'll be going forward with this one. All right, so let's talk a little bit. I mentioned about the surveys. There were 2 surveys that were done last week. Well, I guess this week, since we're still in this week, meaning that second the show is over, we're into next week. That's the new rule. Hey, Bleak, it is great to see you. So 2 surveys were done. The Bank of Canada did one, and it is a quarterly survey, and it's basically on consumer expectations versus business expectations. And this is all about inflation. So businesses, they came back and they said that they're seeing inflation is sticking around for a long time. In fact, they're thinking it could take 2 years before things start to get back to normal. That's pretty bad. Consumers, they shared a pretty similar expectation, except for not so much 2 years. What consumers said is they actually think inflation is still going to be up around 7% a year from now. So that's kind of interesting. What do you guys think about inflation? Are you guys expecting it to stay up high for the long period? Do you guys think it peaked? Because I don't think it's peaked. I think we're close to peaking. I think like if you look at the top of the peak where you got that little bit of a bump, I think we're on the first side of the bump, and we got to go up over the bump before we start to come down a little bit. So that will be interesting. And there's a lot of different factors, of course, that can make it worse. And usually most of those factors nowadays sort of stem out of the whole war in Ukraine. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So in that same survey, they asked businesses, what do you guys think it's going to take to fix this? What do we need? What is the magic solution? Well, their responses were, I would say, no-brainer answers. They basically said that we need higher interest rates than that we're getting, that we need an improved supply chain. Well, people are working on that, but that's going to take some time. Lower oil prices. Now, we did this month, we have seen a drop in oil, so we're starting to get a little bit of that. But there's another oil story coming up that might throw a monkey wrench in that. And of course, the end of fighting in Ukraine. And that makes sense. I mean, I want the war in Ukraine to end, and it's not all about economy. It's simply, I think you would think by 2022 that humanity would be beyond blowing each other up type thing. So definitely, I think there's always better ways to solve issues. And that's one of those things I definitely believe. So the friggin' Oracle says the only way to beat it is to change your eating habits and purchases. Yeah, that makes sense. And you know what? Here's a funny thing. Going into, this bear market. We'll call it just the bear market for now, since we're not officially into a recession. Going into the bear market, one of the things that's a little bit different is that Canadians and Americans, we're sitting on more savings than we ever have before. And that's one of those things. So normally when you're going into a recession, people's savings are very much depleted and they're not sitting on a lot of money. That's one of the reasons that recessions can get really bad. But this time around, it's a little bit different. I think some people have been smart. I mean, a lot of people have been piping up, hey, the recession is coming. We're going to have to pay the piper. And I think there's a lot of smart people out there that did put away money for it, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, that survey I just talked about, because of that, we are pretty much almost guaranteed that the Bank of Canada is going to be looking at another 75-point rate hike. And that would be, well, we'll find out about that on July 13th. So not too far away. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Now, the friggin' Oracle says a lot of small businesses that beat COVID might have greater hurdles in the future. Absolutely. One of the big issues in Canada, and I imagine this is in the world actually, is that a lot of these businesses, they were only able to stay alive because of some of the government supports. And as those supports come to an end, a lot of these businesses, they're going to be at a situation where they just can't survive a recession. So you're going to see, you're going to see an increase in bankruptcies. We've already seen an increase in bankruptcies. So this is not going away anytime soon at all. And we got a dancer in the house. So hi, Tim. And Jordan says, all I know is that regardless of inflation rates up or down, we on ODSP will continue to be priced out and an unnecessary burden on food banks. No, absolutely. I will. And Jordan has brought this up before. It's one of the problems I think that we have with our system, with our social system. ODSP, for people who don't know, that's the Ontario Disability Payment Program. They do not pay a lot of money to folks who can't work. Like, it's different. Like, if a person chooses not to work, then, and they're fully capable, that's a different story. When you've got somebody who cannot work, we certainly need to provide enough support that they can live in there. And sometimes where Jordan was mentioning how they're getting priced out, that's not the best story, for sure. We need our fertilizer from Russia. Tariffs too high. We do need fertilizers from Russia. And interesting enough, one of the companies in my video for tomorrow actually touches a little bit on fertilizers and agricultural technology. So that's kind of a cool thing. Just a little sneak peek there for you. All right, and Ryan saying personal savings rates are at the lowest level since 2008. Wrong information link following. Okay, and I've heard two different things on there. I think there's a lot of people that are deep in debt, but I think when you're talking about total savings, that's where I'm looking at. But if I'm wrong, I will definitely stand corrected on that. Jill says, businesses that are price takers are going to be the businesses that suffer more and are likely to fall. Yeah, absolutely. But businesses that are price setters are going to be better off in this environment. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're setting the price, you can set it. Well, that's part of what inflation is, right? People are setting higher prices due to the demand or due to the supply. It all adds up together. All right. Now, here's an interesting thing that came out as well. One of the big things is that in that survey, once again, the Bank of Canada survey, one of the things they asked employers is if they think that they're going to be raising pays to pace inflation. And what is really interesting is that a lot of these businesses came back and they said, yes, that we're going to have to do that just to be able to attract new employees. Now, the consumers who were asked that same question, they were a little bit more skeptical. Most of them believed that they would not be seeing a rate of pay increase that would match inflation. And I think so far the data probably might drift in their favor a little bit. So it will be very interesting to see how this is all going to turn out. Because keep in mind too, when you're talking to a business, maybe a few businesses do that, but I think there's a lot of businesses that are very much in the idea of, what's the word for it? Trying to get the most out of employees for as little as possible, which of course, there is certainly some fiscal sense to that for them. All right, and the friggin' Oracle says recession equals saving instead of spending. That's an interesting way to look at it. And Rye, of course, comes back for those with the ability to save. Yeah. Now, ideally, the best thing in a recession is if you're able to make ends meet, and at the same time, you're also then able to put away some money to invest, because this is when the deals are out there. This is when you're going to be able to get a lot of your high conviction stocks at really great prices. Now, interesting things. I did hear a funny joke yesterday, because when the Rogers went down, and we're going to talk a tiny bit about Rogers. So when Rogers went down, I was bored out of my skull. The only thing that really was working for me internet-wise was my watch. So I was asking my watch to tell me jokes. And my watch is basically like an electronic form of Tim Danter. So one of the jokes I asked, and this is where we're talking about making ends meet, is apparently there's going to be a new social media network for chickens. You're not going to make a lot of money at it, but you will make hens meet. Anyway, it was just one of those really, really dry ones, and I did think of Tim when that happened. Okay, now back to Jill. Jill, household savings rate in Canada increased 8.10% in the first quarter of 2022 from 6.4% in the fourth quarter of 2021, and that's from Statistics Canada. And that's one of the things with statistics, and this is one of those things that this is a good lesson for everybody. You can take the same stats, the same raw data, and depending on which way you want to run statistical analysis on it, you can almost make it say completely different things. And a lot of people will do that. So a lot of times statistics can be a little bit on the bias side. So you always got to keep that in mind when you are talking about statistics. KMV, hello, glad to be able to join the live today. Well, I'm glad to see you as well, KMV. And Jill says, the job support that came out on Friday indicated that there was a 5% increase in earnings. So yeah, 5%. And if you compare that to the inflation rate, I think it was 7.7, the earnings overall are not matching inflation. So we kind of got that going. Jason Spooner says, only the strong will survive 2023. Maybe. Tim is in the AI now. It might be. Well, you know what? Do you guys want me to live ask for a stupid joke from my watch? Let's try this. We'll see if you can hear it. Let me know if you guys can hear this. Hey Siri, tell me a joke. Hey Siri, tell me a joke.
This one's for the kids. Why did the clock get kicked out of the library? It talked too much.
Sorry, that is kind of funny. So anyway, I hope you guys actually heard that. If you haven't heard it, basically it said, why did the clock get kicked out of the library? Because it talked too much. So anyway, that was kind of funny. So the freaking Oracle says, yes, Spooner, not a great time to retire. No, it is definitely not a great time to retire. The smart will prosper. Absolutely. And the last from Jason here. Yeah, Ken, but this next 2 years will make the retirement a lot sooner. And that's the thing. If you've got the money and you've got the income right now to put that once again into the market, into your high conviction stocks that you're getting at a discount, and let's say you're due to retire in, say, 10 years, you're probably going to be fine. It's only if you're like due to retire like nowish that, you know, there might be a little bit of concern. Okay. Now, I did mention as well, there was one last thing, just a little bit about raises. So they did do a quick look at the CEOs of the TSX 100, and the average raise that the CEOs of the TSX got last year was 23%. So luckily, those guys are definitely not too concerned about inflation. All right. Now, in the US, they did a similar type of survey, and with them, they basically asked a similar question. And now 18% of Americans said that they actually believe inflation is going to be less going forward. Okay, that's fine. 41% says that they think that inflation is going to come in as expected, that you're going to be looking at no surprises at all. Okay, and then 29% think inflation is going to heat up even more. Now, a lot of experts in the States are also thinking that by the end of the year, the Fed will raise the interest rate all the way up to 3.25 to 3.50. So that will be interesting to see if they continue to tighten it that much. But it might happen. All right. And Ryan says StatsCan is irrelevant to the savings rate in recession. And I'll call it your misinformation from now on. Wonderful. I quoted American stats. You quoted Canadian. Applies to rotten oranges. But again, you knew that. Okay. Ballbuster in the house. Perfect. All right. So up next, let's move over to crypto for a few moments. So we've had a little bit, as you know, everything's been sort of collapsing in crypto to a certain extent. This week, Vauld halted. So VAULD. So Vauld, they're kind of a smaller exchange, but they're in the States. They also halted withdrawals and trading. Now, another one that's a little bit bigger that you guys may have heard about is Voyager Digital. Now, they did file for bankruptcy, and this actually goes back an entire week because they cited that they had loans out to Three Arrows Capital that were defaulted on, and that was sort of the camel that broke the information. Sorry, the camel that broke the straw that broke the camel's back. Where the hell's my head today? Okay. That's a little bit on crypto. So I don't think crypto seems to be one of those situations where I think we're going to still see more. We're going to see a lot more sort of fall out. In many sense, this is kind of like, I sort of envision what's been happening to crypto is almost like the .com that happened to technology, that we're getting that severe shakeout. You're going to see a lot of things fall. You're going to see a lot of things collapse. But at the end, on the other side of this, the ones that make it, especially the bigger ones, there's going to be fantastic. So, things like your Bitcoin, probably your Ethereum. Ethereum, of course, also has a merge coming, hopefully in the fall. So they're saying that is, they did do another test last week, and everything went swellingly on that. So we'll have to see how that all turns out. But we're not going to spend too much time on crypto, but just a couple little things. Bitcoin this week has been doing a little bit better than normal, but don't start to bet the farm yet. Like, I don't think, I really don't think we're seeing too much of a turnaround. We're probably going to get a little bit of green, but I think as we start to get some of the more news that's going to be coming down the line, with rate hikes and that, we're probably going to see Bitcoin start to fall too. And keep in mind too, we did have a little bit of green in the markets, and Bitcoin does tend to be tied to that. So that's one of those things to keep in mind. Now, another really interesting thing here is a couple of little pieces of interesting oil news. So there's a big pipeline between Russia and Germany. It's used basically for liquefied natural gas, so LFG. And Russia has turned it off. They said they're turning it off for 10 days to do maintenance on it. And that may be true. But right now, there is concern in Germany. Germany's thinking, what if they don't turn it back on? And that's one of those things that could be an issue. So we could be looking at situations where there is more sort of volatility in that whole market. If Russia continues to cut even more, that's going to create even more demand for oil. So oil, even though it's sunk a little bit in this last month, there may still be bumps. I do think, though, that the massive, insane profits of oil have passed. So, you're probably not going to see anything as big as what you've seen in the last couple of years. But I could be absolutely wrong on that because, all it takes is a black swan event and that will absolutely turn things around. All right. And Jason's saying, Sarnia, next stop, I'm charging my flight. Okay. Oh, I think they're just all talking about doing some kegs over at Ken's place, which is amusing. All right. Now, the strike at CN has ended, which is fantastic. It ended due to binding arbitration, which both sides had agreed to. It was actually really interesting because when we first heard about this strike, I honestly expected CN's stock price to go down a little bit as a result of this, because you're talking about a stoppage of work, so normally that does impact your market. But for some reason, and I think the reason is that the market had a little bit of an upflux at that time, so it sort of inflated that price that we didn't even see the bump from that. So CN is still looking good. They're still huge on my list of favorite stocks in Canada. Now, going back to the Ukraine, one of the interesting things is Ukraine produces about, let's see here, 20 million tons of grain that normally would come out of the Ukraine. So that's a lot of food that is not making it to the rest of the world. Now, as a result, in Canada, we actually have more wheat planted this year than we've seen in at least 10 years. So it's been a while since we've had this much going. I still don't think it's going to make a big difference, but at least it's a bit more out there. And, hopefully, while Canadian farmers making a bit more money never hurts. The big thing is let's just hope the weather stays great this year for bumper crops, and not have any more of some of the craziness we've had the last few years when it comes to weather. All right. Well, takes us all the way over to technology. So over in tech, we've got a few things that are happening. One thing that's really interesting is that chip sales, they're actually coming back from insanity because the actual demand for computer chips has starting to go down. And there's two big things for that. One, there's not as many people in the market to buy personal computers. All right, that's cool. And the second, takes us back to crypto a bit. There's not as high of a demand for crypto mining. People are kind of scaling back with the whole collapse of crypto. And, there's a lot of people who are just not doing it or just not wanting to get into it. Now, this is a good thing because this means that, one, if you do buy a computer, you may not have as long of a wait time to get the chips. I know when I was looking at the possibility of another Apple not that long ago, it was a crazy amount of wait time. It was like about a 4-month wait once you placed an order to get your computer. So I imagine that that's going to come down a little bit. The other big thing is, of course, the auto industry. That's been one of the linchpins for them waiting to get chips. And that's going to improve that a little bit, which is good. All right. Now, one big earnings report that did come out this week was Ford. Now, they were down 1.02%. And here's an interesting thing about Ford. They did report lower than expected second quarter sales. And one of the areas that they have been struggling with is, the global shortage of semiconductors. So that kind of ties into those chips. So if they're starting to get chips a little bit better, then that would actually be a really good thing. And that's kind of cool. All right. And Ryan says, genuine question. Average mining cost in America is about $17,000. Could BTC ever fall below the cost of mining without a total collapse? Wondering if the cost of mining is a bottom. That's actually a really good question. It can obviously collapse below that, but would that cause a total collapse? It's really hard. I don't think it would. I think if we fell below 12K, I think we would definitely be in trouble. But I also don't think we're going to go down there. I'm really thinking that what you're saying here makes sense. 17K does seem to be, even when it's wicked down in this current thing, it hasn't wicked below 17K. So that could be the bottom. Yeah, absolutely. And we make approximately 25 million tons of wheat and export 15 million tons. Yeah, exactly. But you also have to realize we have been doing that in the past. So when you hear about 15 million tons, that's not really making up for that 25 million tons. So it's basically, if you knew what we had produced normally, let's say, for example, if we exported normally 10 million and then we went up to 15 mils, and we would take a 5 million dent, if that's the number. And I don't know what that number is, so I'm not going to say that that is the number. I sold all my crypto, just going to pump and dump crypto for now on. Yeah, I think a lot of people have. People no longer have the buying powers to buy EVs. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Although, interestingly enough, Rivian actually has seen a little bit of an uptick in their sales. So, interesting idea. And Ryan saying, yeah, I only asked because it would no longer be profitable to mine below the average mining cost. Yeah, and that does make sense. And when you think about Bitcoin, you need the miners for the network to function. So maybe that is almost a hard-coded bottom in there for now. But that's a good thought. I kind of want to look more into that one, honestly, because I do think that that's pretty darn good. And interesting enough, we were just talking about Ford's earnings, but GM did report that they've only sold 484,200 vehicles during the second quarter in China. And this is China is normally GM's largest global market, and apparently that puts them down about 35.5% from the same time last year, so from a year earlier. So that's kind of big issue that GM is having. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. When we get to house prices in Toronto and Vancouver are going to be coming down. Now, some people have already reported that we've had 11% and 13% since February of this year. But it'll be interesting to see. And I've heard a lot of different places. When I was doing some research today, there's a lot of different home prices right across the world. Prices seem to be breaking. It seems to be starting to come back down. But that issue we have in Canada, of course, is we don't have the builders. And that, I think, may keep our prices from going really far down, or at least at the same speed as the rest of the world. But now, speaking of jobs, I got some interesting data out of the US. So some of the job openings, they fell. They had 11.68 million, and they have actually fallen down to 11.25 million. So that's at least a little bit of in the right direction. I believe Powell wants to get down to around 8 million job openings. So there's still definitely a long way to go. So the unfilled jobs, so they dipped from 7.2% to 6.9%. So, there are more people working. And they also said the quitting jobs rate as well has dropped as well. Apparently, a lot of people like to quit their jobs in the US. Now, they gave me a number, but they didn't tell me what this number meant. They said 4.72 million, but that seems like a lot of people, and I don't have a time frame on, if that's for the year or not. So I do not have that. But I do have some interesting thing with layoffs. So as we move towards a recession, layoffs become a big thing. So in June, and this is the US, we're on the US right now, they had 32,517 layoffs, which is huge. Now, the number one, and it's funny, when I saw that statistic, I was thinking in my mind, I bet you tech is number one, but they're not. It's actually the automotive industry. They had the most layoffs in June with 10,578. So that's a lot. But now, mind you, some of the Tesla layoffs could be considered automotive, even though they are kind of tech at the same time. So, there might be a little bit of overlap on that. Now, in Canada, the jobless rate is down to 4.9%, which is fantastic. But our big issue, and I sort of touched on this with the homes, is with construction. So construction, they have 81,500 open positions. So that's a lot of positions. And they have actually said that they will need approximately 309,000 construction workers over the next 10 years just to keep the industry afloat. So that's kind of interesting. Now, what is kind of sad though, is that skilled trades apprenticeship in like your community colleges, the registrations have actually fallen to their lowest level in about a decade. So we don't have the students in there learning it to replace all the jobs that we need filled. So there's definitely going to be a little bit of an issue with that. And here's the thing, if you are somebody who's young and you're looking at an option for education, if you're good with a hammer or electronics or plumbing or any of that, the trades are a great way to go. They make a lot of money. I know at one point, when I used to live in Nova Scotia, some of our people who had a trade, they were making a lot more money over in Alberta than people who, just had a degree. So that's kind of one of those things to put in mind. The friggin' Oracle said, I bought a hedge trimmer. Inflation isn't keeping me down. Although, that hedge trimmer is probably keeping your hedges down. A hedge fund. That's actually kind of funny. Official, Ken is single-handedly keeping us out of a recession. Yeah, thank you, Ken. We all appreciate that. Here's an interesting little thing I got from Air Canada. So Air Canada, normally if you want to bring a pet with you on Air Canada, you've got two options. If it's a small pet and it can fit under your seat, you can do it that way. But anything bigger, you normally have to put it into cargo. Well, normally you can do that all summer. And there's a window in the winter where you can't do it because it's too cold. And there are certain planes you can't do it on because they don't have pressurized cargo holds. Well, Air Canada has now put that on pause. So this summer, no pets in the cargo. And the reason they're doing that is because of because of the problems they're having with labor. So they had an incident at Pearson where somebody had brought a dog on the plane, and that poor dog got stuck in the cargo hold for 21 hours at Pearson, which is just absolutely ridiculous. So while they're having the issues that they're having, and the whole world, Armageddon, they're calling it, while that's all going on, you're not going to be able to bring a Fido with you if you're going someplace. So you'll have to find alternative ways, like maybe a dog sitter, until this all gets resolved. And it's going to take a while for that to all sort of come out in the wash. Now, here is something, and this is really interesting. Let me ask, have any of you guys ever taken pets on cargo? I've flown Blaze. I flew her from Halifax to Toronto, from Toronto to Halifax, and from Halifax to Ottawa. So she has had 3 trips in the cargo hold. She does not like it. She does not like it at all, but she has done it 3 times. So my cat is a frequent flyer. That's probably why the birds fear her, but she's very lazy, so they have nothing to fear. Okay, over to Ukraine again. One of the things that concerns me is when Russia starts passing some laws that is basically their version of hunkering in for a long war. So there are 2 laws that they haven't officially been passed yet in Russia, but they are on the books. They're looking at them. So one of them is a law that will force businesses to supply goods to the military. So any goods that they require, if your business makes it, you have to provide it to the military. That's going to be the rule. That will be the law. The second law is that any of those businesses, all of their employees will be expected to work more hours. So that way they can produce more, whether it's bullets they're making or whatever it is. So that's kind of an interesting thing. When you start to get laws like that passed, to me, it shows me that the Russian mindset right now is that, they're in for a very long haul. So any of us who are hoping for a quick, expedient end to that war, we're probably not going to get it. So that's, kind of one of those things. Ken wants to fly gorillas out of the Congo. Okay. I would hate to, I know that Ken is joking, but I would hate to see the amount of red tape that you would have to go through to fly a gorilla out of the Congo. I'm pretty sure that you're not allowed to own a gorilla unless you have like a zoo or something, but that would be interesting. Now, another really interesting piece of news that I ran into this week is Amazon is looking to roll out Amazon Live. So what Amazon Live is basically they're going to take influencers and have influencers live stream almost like the shopping network, but live stream and pitch products. And then depending on whichever product it is they're pitching, they'll get a commission for this. This is how the influencers would get paid. So their commission would run from 5% all the way up to 20%, depending, of course, on the product. So it's kind of interesting. Now, this seems to be that companies like Amazon, who were making record profits in the pandemic, now people are not spending and using it as much. So they're basically looking for another way to get some income flowing. And that's it. That's what Amazon is up to. They're sort of saying, let's roll out Amazon Live. Let's see what happens. And that's what they're going to do. It'll be interesting to see what kind of influencers come over there. I'll check it out just for the novelty of it. But, it'll definitely be interesting. I think TikTok tried something similar, but I don't know how that turned out for them. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out for Amazon Live. Now, would any of you guys check out Amazon Live? Is this something you guys needed in your life? To me, I would just rather go straight to Amazon if I need something and just buy it, opposed to, watching somebody demonstrate it for 20 minutes and overhype it. But have to see how that looks when we get there. Love the Home Shopping Network. I tried to order a samurai sword out of Flint, Michigan. No dice. Yeah, I can understand that, Ken. Good old, yeah. I know the days before the internet. Sometimes if you were absolutely bored at home, you'd like maybe watch the shopping channel, but you had to be really bored. Now, I've caught my mom watching the shopping channel, and normally when that happens, it turns into a monetary loss event because, she always buys crazy stuff off the shopping channel. But, oh well, that's kind of an interesting thing. Now, here's another interesting story. I'm not very big on all of the meme stocks. And one of our biggest ones, of course, is GameStop, so GME. And I know some of you guys love GME, which is cool. But they announced that they're doing a 4-to-1 stock split, and that's going to be done on July 22nd. Interestingly enough, this is one of these, buy the news, or sell the rumor, buy the rumor, sell the news type things, because stocks went up about 15% as a result. Now, GME is just one of these stocks that every time Wall Street Bets gets the idea to pump it, it's just, to me, it's just so volatile because you never know when it's going to get pumped or when you get just a bunch of crazy fan folk deciding like, oh, let's all buy GME today and see what we can do. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Now, Andrew says the problem with construction industry is that nowadays youngsters don't want to work hard with their hands. Everybody prefers to sit in an air-conditioned room and play with the computer. That makes sense. I think a lot of people who've grown up with the internet, I can understand how a lot of people probably don't want to be, doing that manual labor type stuff. And that's an area where I think during the pandemic, I think we shed a lot of different labor type jobs, and I don't think those have come back. So which is sad because honestly, if I was good with a hammer, I'd consider being a carpenter because that looks like it would be fun. You get to build stuff and all of that, but I'm horrible at carpentry. I know as a kid, for some reason, I just decided I wanted to make a birdhouse. It's because, I wanted there to be birds coming and landing on top of the shed that was outside the window. So my uncle said, okay, I'll help you make it. And it was probably the most janky birdhouse in the history of birdhouses. I mean, it was bad. It was really bad. It didn't look very appeasing. But here's the funny thing. The birds loved it. So something was right. But if you looked at it from the outside, it looked like a dog's breakfast. But that's okay. Now, mind you, I didn't really know what I was doing. And, my uncle was pretty much taking everything I suggested and doing it. So you don't do that. That's crazy. Now, let's move back over to gas for a minute. So we talked a little bit about oil going down. We are seeing a little bit of relief at the pumps. Now, I don't know how much relief you guys are seeing. I know some places in the US apparently have seen up to 11% of a drop, which is fantastic. What are you guys seeing out there? What are the pumps looking like in your neighborhood? I wonder which of you guys is right now getting the cheapest amount of gas. So that's kind of an interesting thing. So we got that. We also have Elon news. We'll bring up Elon here in just a moment. So the funny thing about Elon is it was looking like it was going to be a pretty tame week. And then the first thing drops, and it's all about Elon's twins. I was like, okay, what twins? So apparently last November or so, he had twins with a some kind of I think it was an AI designer, and I'm not going to even try to pronounce her name because I know I would just crucify it. But that takes his kid count up to 9 kids. Now, initially, it was kind of more of a rumor, I think, when it first came out, because all people really knew was they knew the birth date of the kids, and then they knew that the mom was changing their last name to Musk. With a bit of deeper diving, there we go. My tongue works today. They uncovered that his name was on the birth certificate. Okay, cool. So he's probably, and then of course Elon and his, the way he talks is somebody asked him about it, and on Twitter, Elon of course replies that he's doing his best to solve the underpopulation problem. It's like, seriously, okay. So, Elon's up to 9. Now, that, of course, makes me think of Nate Polmateer. Nate Polmateer has 10 kids. So, I don't know, Nate. If when you watch this, you better think about maybe having a couple more just to keep a foot of Elon, because, he's catching you. Top executive. Yeah, and she worked out of their AI department, so. But, it's kind of interesting. And I have more gas than Texaco. Damn shreddies. Oh, holy banana bread, Ken. I got that. $1.80 a liter. Okay, so Trevor right now is winning. Does anybody have gas lower than $1.80 a liter? Otherwise, everyone should go to Trevor's place and fill up. So we'll keep that going. But back to Elon. So that's not all when it comes to Elon. So Elon has, of course, the Twitter saga, which keeps on continuing. So Elon has now come out and said he's not going to buy it. So it's like the hokey pokey, you put your left foot in, you put your left foot out. It's kind of that whole thing like that. So that's kind of interesting. So Elon is saying he's not going to buy Twitter. And Twitter, of course, said, we are going to sue. We will sue because, we had a deal. So here's the interesting thing. Nobody really knows what Elon's motivation is. Some people have speculated that he's basically trying to force them into a lower price, get them all up and at it. And then basically at that point say, hey, well, okay, maybe we can still do the deal, but at this price instead of that price. Now, another theory I heard too, and I don't know if I subscribe to this, is that he was just using the entire Twitter saga as an excuse to sell some Tesla stocks without people getting too concerned about it. So who knows? I mean, at this point right now, I don't think anybody really cares. I mean, Tesla has sunk quite a bit. I mean, most of the tech stocks have sunk quite a bit, so it's not really a big issue. Holy flatulence. I like that. Could cost him $1 billion for canceling the contract. Yeah, that's what the whole thing. So it makes me think. That's why I kind of lean towards he's trying to just railroad them into a cheaper price. And that makes sense. Remember to hit the like button. Yeah, absolutely. Do that. I think Elon is addicted to the fact he says something and people follow. Elon does have a lot of influence that way. I mean, whether or not you love or hate Elon, you have to respect all that he has done. Because, I mean, he has come an absolutely long way from, I mean, I remember when I first started hearing his name, I was like, why is people talking about this Elon? Who's this Elon? And now you don't have people saying that anymore. He's pretty much, he is out there. He's doing everything. He's one of these people that he will invent something just because he wants something done. So, whether it be a tunnel, through the desert, or, whether it's robots to go build his settlement on Mars, he gets things done. And to me, that's actually pretty cool, because I look at it this way. Most bureaucracies, when they get an idea to do something, you're lucky if it gets done in 10 years. Elon gets an idea to do something, and that afternoon, he's probably already starting to draw up prototypes, and he's already pulling together the people who can get it done. So that's kind of an interesting thing. He has a bigger God complex than Jesus. Maybe. And this is what I say is, if he is changing the world for the better, let him have as big of an ego as he wants. Because in the end, we are all benefiting from what he is bringing to the world, opposed not. So that's kind of the way I look at our good old buddy Elon. And I'm always hoping, like, I don't know if you guys have remember the Pi phone. The Pi phone is still out there. It's still a thing. I mean, that sounds like it's revolutionary. And when this Pi phone comes out, we're talking about a phone that has solar panels on it so it can charge. It also has crypto miners built into it to do some mining. I think of a coin that he plans to use for Mars. So, and not to be confused with the Mars coins and the other Elon type coins that are out there, which have nothing to do with him. So there's a lot of different things that are interesting. And when I read the specs, when I first ran into the Pi phone, I think we talked about this last fall. It's the first phone that I've looked at, and I'm like, oh cow, that's the first phone that could actually tempt me to leave Apple, to leave the iPhone for it, just because of all of the things it looked like it could do. Especially if you have a phone, if it can charge itself, then that's really good if you have an issue with power outages. And if it's instead of using traditional things like Rogers and Rogers had, when they work, this thing's pulling, off of Starlink. So it'd be interesting to see once that finally gets all pulled out and see where that actually goes, because I think that would be fantastic. So anyway, that's Elon for this week. And that's kind of one of those things. So we got about 10 minutes left. We can talk about anything that you guys want to talk about. I am open for pretty much anything. While we're doing that, I'll let you know what's coming up on the channel this week. So tomorrow we're going to take a look at some small cap. So we're looking at small cap stocks that could be potential recession busters. So small cap stocks that are just doing a little bit better in the recession than some of the regular stocks. So we're going to take a look at some of those. And then Thursday we had a request video. and that is on the VIX. A few people are wanting to see how the heck that VIX works. So we're going to do a deep dive on the VIX, how to use it, what it's useful for, how to read it, all that fun stuff. So that will be Thursday. Then we'll be back again with another video, an actual this week video on Saturday. I don't know yet what it is going to be because I haven't thought beyond Thursday yet, but it'll definitely be something interesting. See, Jill says, back to the Ukraine thing. Our exports have been doing quite well, and we had the largest trade surplus in May, mostly bolstered by energy exports. Yeah. I mean, it's one of these things. Here's this big thing. I'm going to go off on a little tangent here. A lot of the oil that we produce in Canada, well, almost all of the oil we produce in Canada, we're shipping it off elsewhere to get processed, and then it's being sold back to us at higher prices. So there's no reason, like we've got the brain power that we couldn't set up our own processing factories here. I know some of the environmentalists might be like a little bit, a little annoyed at it, but here's the reality. If we could process our own oil here, and with the amount of oil and the reserves we have, especially if you look at like the oil sands, there's a lot of friggin' oil in the oil sands in Alberta. That would benefit this country immensely. It would definitely benefit. It would be a heyday once again for Alberta. I remember when I lived in Alberta at one point, it was they used to argue about what to do with the surplus. And that to me was always fantastic because when I lived in Nova Scotia, there was no arguing about what to do with the surplus. It was more or less, how are we going to pay this deficit? But Alberta, it was a surplus. And that, that is oil. Oil will do that. Oil is, it is the lifeblood of Alberta, of Canada as well. And that's why one of the things that did annoy me is they're looking to build a couple of ports on the East Coast, basically by taking liquefied natural gas, and they want to be able to ship it to Europe from these ports. But the Liberal government has said no to any funding for it. And I was just thinking, oh dear, this is just one of these things. Like, if you think about it, the Newfoundland, so St. John's, is pretty much the closest, to Europe of any part of North America. That would be the perfect place to be shipping stuff like that from. And on the other side of the coast, we got BC, and they're, once again, not the closest. I mean, if you want to look at the closest to Asia, you're looking at pretty much Alaska. But at the same time, I think at least on the East Coast, that would have been a good thing to have happen. Hopefully they can pull the funding together to do that without the Fed help, because I think that would be wonderful. Vapor Rub is awesome. Vapor Rub. Okay. All right, because Ken was doing yard work, Vapor Rub for his muscles. Okay. That was not where I went with that. I was actually going back to the holy flatulence and thinking, yeah, put some Vapor Rub under your nose, and then you can be around people who fluctuate as much as they want, and you're not going to smell it. At least if it works in the morgues, it should work for that. Anyway, wow, we've gone to some bizarre places. I will definitely give us that. All right, so that's all I really got today. You guys don't have any questions, then normally I go to an hour, but if we got new questions, we'll start to wrap things up at this moment. So anyway, it has been fantastic. I'm so glad you guys are all here today. It certainly makes Sunday afternoon a lot more fun. We'll be back once again next week, and we'll have videos all week. So everybody, and have yourself a fantastic evening. Have a great supper. Maybe hit the barbecue if you got one. And we'll talk to you guys again next week. All right. Take care, everybody.